Welcome to Tips from Trestle. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and leadership. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. As a 25-year veteran of the hospitality industry, I've focused my work on creating exceptional experiences for the customers we serve. My goal for this podcast? Educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living to bring food and hospitality to the front of mind in our industry. Let's bring the innovative and passionate spirit of hospitality to everything that we do, for the residents, families, guests, and employees we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. I'm joined today by Stacy Shewey, the founder and CEO of Hands for Life. Stacy's career began with Hyatt Hotels and Resorts. During this time, she was awarded the prestigious Circle of Excellence Award, which is reserved for the hospitality industry's best sales associates. Stacy went on to form a hospitality company where she owned and operated hotel properties, freelanced as a hotel feasibility consultant, was a consultant investor on a $60 million resort startup, and contracted out as an event planner. She then left the hospitality industry to become an executive director for an assisted living and memory care community before forming Hands for Life. Stacy, thanks for joining me today here on Tips from Trestle.
Thank you, Aaron.
So I wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit about Hands for Life, what you're doing, and then I want to talk about your take on the aging crisis and kind of where we're at and what Hands for Life is going to be doing to address that.
Yeah, so I started Hands for Life 2.5 years ago after resigning as an executive director for a large assisted living memory care community. And I resigned there, but I wanted to stay in the industry. I was not fulfilled in that position, but had a heart for seniors. And I wanted a job where I was making a difference every day in somebody's life. So after taking about 2 months to pray about it, research, I really felt the calling to serve the seniors in developing nations. So the vision started small with just opening assisted living, but has grown into a beautiful vision of involving children in that. So, but in my research, I found that, we're in an aging crisis here in the United States. Everybody knows that the baby boomers are all coming to age and we can't build the assisted living and CCRCs fast enough, and finding care is hard, caregivers. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's a global aging crisis going on right now. And by the year 2050, the number of seniors worldwide is expected to double to more than 1.5 billion people. And that'll be 80% of those 1.5 will live in developing countries. So, a lot of people ask, why don't you work here in the States? There's so many people in need, but that's true. But the United States also has 1.5 million nonprofits. So there's a lot of people here to help. Yeah. So I feel that, we need to help those in places where they truly have no one and nothing. So
that 1.5 billion number is staggering. When you think about the entirety of the world's population, I mean, that's a huge number of people. And I don't think we talk about that near enough here in the United States, because like you said, we're very focused on, especially in our industry, on our own citizens and what we're doing. And so obviously Hands for Life came from this kind of research and this passion to serve seniors, but then realizing that there's service needed elsewhere than just here in the United States. So what can we do to address the growing problem of the aging crisis globally and across the world?
Well, I feel that education is the key, and we're taking this on to serve the elders in developing nations as a missionary type structure, and we are really the only missionary organization that I could find whose primary focus is on caring for the elderly. There's a lot out there that are caring for children and clean water and have, hunger, but truly focus on the seniors, that's rare. So when I thought about what is the root problem, like why are seniors not being taken care of? Why is there no focus on this? And I came to the realization that it's global, it's here in the United States, that as you age, you become inherently less valuable. Once you can't contribute financially to the economy, you're not viewed as important. So how do we get to the root of that problem and change that thinking? And our vision is to use the younger generation. We need to change the thinking of the children. So we want to really focus on the circle of life. Your parents take care of you. There comes a time when you have to take care of your parents.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that intergenerational aspect. I feel like here in the United States, we're talking a little bit more about that and integrating that into what we do. Because I think here the culture is very much geared towards, independence, right? I'm going to be independent. And so as a senior, they might be okay with moving to an assisted living community because they don't want to be that burden on their children who are trying to live their lives. As you've been looking at things, in other cultures, do you find that same mindset is there, or is the idea of it becoming more intergenerational of a process in other countries and developing countries more prevalent?
Well, in Asia, they used to do a really good job of honoring their elders, but that has fallen away in that culture as well. What is happening in developing nations is there's a lot of different problems with caring for the seniors. One is that people are fleeing their country for better opportunities, and the elders can't make that long trek, so they get left behind and abandoned. It's also that a lot of them have, they live in huts, they don't have a lot of money, they have lots of children, and there's so many mouths to feed that you choose who you're going to feed that day. Is it going to be your parent or is it going to be your child? So there's a lot of the neglect out of those reasons. But then there's also a lack of education of the aging process in developing nations. And when they don't know about Alzheimer's and dementia, and if a parent all of a sudden becomes confused, or they forget who you are and they start acting goofy, or dad becomes violent, they think that their loved one is possessed by a demon, and they reject them, and they become outcast. So there's a lot of different problems to solve. The government also in these developing nations don't recognize seniors as a population to protect. So Honduras is where our first project is going to be. And that country is just starting. They just put together in the past few years an agency, a governmental agency, to protect the seniors, but it has a long way to go. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. I was definitely curious to know about the different cultural aspects, because I think, you know, in our industry here, we get very, not necessarily tunnel vision being the way to look at it, but I think we kind of, this is what we're looking for, and most everybody tends to kind of fall into a couple of different buckets. But as you look globally, there's so much, variety of culture and perspectives on it, and so I think it's important to kind of meet people where they're at, and learn how we can work with them. So you mentioned your Honduras project. I want to get into that because I'm super intrigued, super excited about what you're doing. And I want you to kind of tell the listeners what you're trying to create, and then we'll kind of deep dive into that, because I think that's going to be a really cool project you've got going.
Yeah, so what our model is that we go and we're building an intergenerational home. And we are building an assisted living on one side, and on the other side will be a home for children. So we're pairing up true orphans, people that have no one and nothing. So we take the children orphan and the senior orphan, and we put them in a home together so the seniors can impart their wisdom on the kids, and then the kids can learn what I call the forgotten commandment of honoring their elders. So under this model in Honduras, we have 5 acres, and it's tucked up on the side of a mountain. And we have a design team here in the United States who have come alongside me. We have DK Levy Architects and 828 Interior Design. And they have gone down to Honduras with our Hands for Life team, looked at this land. We are collaborating with the Rotary Club. I'm a Rotarian, and I've partnered with the Rotary organization and in Honduras, and we have their architects, their engineers, their construction workers, all collaborating together to build a first of its kind campus that's going to have not only the intergenerational home, but it has a school for the kids. We have a worship center. We have workshops. So we'll have job skill workshops. We'll have like a woodworking, a art workshop. We'll have a cooking workshop, and the kids will assess these kids, and we'll find out what are their strengths, what are their passions, and we'll match them with the seniors. And then the seniors can teach these kids their trade. So it gives purpose to the senior, and it also gives skills to the children.
That's such a cool concept.
Yeah, and it's so important. We're they show the studies. We're kind of creating a petri dish here on what we're building. We're following the science. We know that combining the 2 generations increase the longevity of both generations. It increases the longevity of the seniors and their quality of care. And it also increases the longevity of children. It's called the grandmother effect. The children have less diseases and mortality rates. So putting them together, we just have like a recipe for this beautiful organic sanctuary.
Yeah, it's so great. I love the idea of the petri dish, because as we were kind of talking to put things together for the conversation, one of the things that you had mentioned was the ability to kind of go to a place like Honduras where the government is, they see the need, they're putting things together to try and address it, but then coming in and working alongside them to use kind of the best practices from senior living, and actually putting them to test and letting kind of see what's going to work the best, and kind of continue to mold and grow the programming and what you're doing to do that. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you want to approach doing that?
Yeah, so it is true that in these developing nations, they don't have the regulatory um, systems in place, and there's very few rules and regulations to follow. So we can go in and we can really collaborate. We're collaborating with senior living industry experts from all different aspects, from the building design to make sure that we're building something very green and using solar power and the latest in backup generators. And we're looking at, all the studies and research in the design, in the interior design, colors, and, making sure there's a lot of windows around. So we're paying attention to the circadian rhythms with our seniors who have dementia. And so we're able to take the best of the best and implement in our building, in our SOPs, and in our operations, and take a look at our statistics then. How is this working with combining the best practices and doing our intergenerational living? And then we can study that and hopefully send back some positive results here to the United States. And then developed nations can take that lessons and those research and apply it back here to change the ways that we are doing some things. And it's not that, we want to go in and we're really doing our research to do our homework to honor their culture and honor the ways that they're doing things that do work in their area, but we want to enhance their culture. And in the same time, we want to be able to expose them and educate them to the knowledge of the cutting edge solutions to some of their problems.
Yeah, I love the idea of, going somewhere where you can really push with the innovation and try things that people have talked about wanting to do. I think we
Right.
here in the States talk about, well, this is a really great idea, but we've got regulation 25 BCA paragraph 7 line 42 or whatever it is that
Yeah.
says you can't try that, and we kind of all know that that's something that in general we think is a good thing that we should test and see if it really has an impact. And so I think the idea of going to places like developing countries where the government is saying, come here, help us do better, and let's figure out the best way to do this, and bringing that back to these developed nations to be able to implement them. I think that's such a great approach. Kind of creating that think tank of, hey, we've done this, we've tested it, here's the data to prove it. Now let's go and let's fix that regulation, and let's maybe take that sentence out of the paragraph.
Yeah, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is an expert in dementia care. I was on a call with him yesterday, and we're working through what our programming is going to look like in our educational materials, because we not only house a small number of people, but we have a very large community outreach program that we're going to take out to the community, because we believe that the best design is keeping families together. So we want to focus on the families, and we want to shore families up to take care of their own. And we want to just really house true orphans. But in our community outreach program, it's all going to be education and educating the people on the aging process and helping the caregivers, because we know that when the caregivers aren't educated and they're overworked and frustrated, that's when you have the elder abuse and neglect. So I was talking to this gentleman about just not only like regulatory aspects of doing things different. We have this canvas. We're going into a country that has very few facilities to take care of the elder, and there's no attention put on them. So we have this blank canvas to do things right. And I'm saying, you know how like here in the States, we have even labeled dementia care. When you think of dementia, it's a negative connotation. Right. And I remember talking to Jane Rode, who is in the industry, and she shared the story where she was in a community, a memory care community, and asked the head caretaker there, so tell me about Mrs. Smith. And then the caretaker just went all into Mrs. Smith's diagnoses, right, and her care plan. Well, she has frontal lobe, dementia, and she's on this kind of medication, and she gets very agitated when you do that. And Jane said, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, tell me about Mrs. Smith. Like, who is she? And the caregiver was dumbfounded. And she's like, oh, I guess I should know more about Mrs. Smith other than her care plan. So, even thinking like that, like, let's not go in there and teach all of the science behind the care and the science behind the aging process. Let's take it from an approach of really giving person-centered care and holistic care and really treating the person with respect. And so we're starting from scratch. So we know what has been done wrong here. So let's do it the right way and change generations, around the world.
Stacy, I think that's great. I love learning about the project, and I think that's a great opportunity for us to start talking about how we service our customers, and we'll pick that up here in part 2.
So there you have it, another one in the books. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. You can follow or direct message me on LinkedIn, where I'm always commenting and posting about food, hospitality, and leadership for the senior living industry. Or give me a follow on Twitter at AHFish or Instagram at AaronHFish. And check out my company, Trestle Hospitality Concepts, at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.